Tobias freaks out and, in Hork-Bajir-Morph, poses to murder Hitler, even bottom-rung, just some guy Hitler, because time travel just makes Tobias so bloodthirsty. I mean, really, I would have thought Tobias and Hitler would have totally have hung out, maybe trade soup recipes or something. Cassie manages to talk him down, but Rachel drops a grenade on a tank, and the explosion causes Tobias to jump and accidentally stab Hitler dead. Yes, all those time travel stories about how you can't kill Hitler, and here's one where they actually do manage to kill Hitler, but it doesn't matter. Well played, Applegate. Well played. The explosion also caused a large chunk of tank to smash Visor-Force. The Yeerk tries to make an escape from his host, but the Animorphs nab him and throw him in a fire. And with that, Visor-Force is stopped and the Time Matrix is reclaimed. It's at this point that Cassie starts to figure out some of the Element's loopholes and suggests using the Time Matrix to change things back and bring Jake back to life. So they converse with Visor-Force's dying host body, a young man named John Berryman. Cassie asks him who his parents were and how they met, because in order to fix everything that's happened, they plan to go back and prevent John Berryman from ever being born. I guess this is as good a time as any as to discuss the Time Matrix, because it's kind of an oddity for this series. Its origins and exact nature is never fully explained. It's never brought up in the Ellimist Chronicles as you might expect. I mean, why would the Ellimist make it? He doesn't need it for himself. He can do everything he can do naturally. The same goes for the Krayak. Well, I have a theory to all of this. Nothing confirmed within the books or personally by K. Applegate, but on the other hand, there's nothing in the books that disproves this either. See, the first thing we need to realize is that the Time Matrix is not actually a time machine. Oh, it can function as a time machine, and Andalite mythology understands it as a time machine, but that's not its primary purpose. Much in the same way a, say, Texas Instrument calculator can play Tetris, but that's not what its primary purpose is. The Time Matrix was used twice in the Andalite Chronicles, and neither time did it function like a traditional space-time vehicle. The first time it was used, Elfangor, Visor 3, and Lauren all wished to go to different places at the same time, resulting in a patchwork universe. The second time Lauren used it, she went back to Earth, but a version of Earth where everyone remembered her as being a few years older. Neither of these incidences are anywhere close to the typical idea of the capacities of a time machine. That's because it's not a time machine. It's a God machine, or a reality machine, if you will. It is a device that rewrites the entire universe to the will of the operator. Remember at the end of the Andalite Chronicles when Elfangor and Lauren discovered Chapman, even though he should have been dead? That's because Lauren rewrote the universe so that she never was abducted by the Skritna, and thus neither was Chapman. It wasn't the original Chapman, it was a rewritten Chapman that never went on those adventures. The original Chapman did indeed die of oxygen deprivation on the Andalite ship, and his body was indeed torn apart by the black hole. This is just a second Chapman. The original Visor 3 probably died of starvation or old age or whatever in the Patchwork universe. The one that currently antagonizes the Animorphs is a second Visor 3, which goes a long way in explaining why Visor 3 acts like his meeting with Elfangor in the construction site was there first. But the question remains, why does the Time Matrix even exist? What's it for? I think it's part of the rules made between the Ellimist and the Krayak, a random element that would allow smaller mortal beings to wield ultimate power and change the universe in ways the two of them cannot perceive. They themselves cannot interfere directly with its operations, which would explain why the Ellimist had to wait till Elfangor gave up the Time Matrix and buried it before putting a new coat of paint on the space-time continuum, and explains why he couldn't just pluck the thing from Visor 4's hands. He had to send his personal bloodhounds, the Animorphs, to do all the heavy lifting for him. See, say what you will about the Krayak, but the Ellimist is a poor sport. He has very little respect for the races and individuals on his team in this global conflict. He lies all the time, he'll twist and manipulate the rules as best as he can to get out ahead, and he'll make cheap deals with the Krayak when he needs to. He hates the Time Matrix. He hates it when other beings have the powers that he has, and he'll offer one of the Animorphs' lives as payment to get Visor 4's grubby paws off of it, and using loopholes to give the Animorphs temporary immortality and the chance to bring the fallen Animorph back to life. The more I learn about the Ellimist, the more I agree with the Droid's assessment of him. that he's a simpering, meddling nitwit. It is because of the nature of the time matrix that when Cassie manipulates it, they end up in a 1967 as we know it, with hippies and all of that. There's no way a hippie movement happened in a universe that, 30 years later, still had slaves, controlled media, and genocide. And even if it was the second alternate timeline we've been following, the chances that it would all be the same as it was in the original 1967 is just silly. No, the true irony in all of this is that when Cassie used the time matrix, she created a universe where all of Visifor's manipulations never happened. They fixed the universe without having to prevent John Berryman from being born. And yet, just by being there and distracting people, they still prevent John's parents from meeting, and he's never conceived. What's sad is that this also means that Visifor is still alive, just in a different host. Sure, the timeline has changed so that he'll probably never discover the time matrix at the construction site, but it still feels like Cassie aimed her sights at the wrong target. Because Cassie and the rest of the Animorphs conceived of the time matrix as a time machine, and therefore made it function as a time machine, this causes the time matrix to return to its hiding spot at the construction site, and Jake to pop back into existence, alive and well. Yes, this is the second time Jake has died and come back, which means he officially earns his TV's Frank Merit Badge. One more and he upgrades to Kenny. And thus the book ends, which pisses me off because the inside cover promised a fucking Zeppelin, and we didn't get a scene with a fucking Zeppelin. Post-book follow-up. Megamorphs 3, Elfangor's Secret is kind of an odd duck. It's the best Megamorphs book up to this point, and it's perhaps the biggest in terms of cosmic scope, at least in the top 3. It certainly has some of the biggest set pieces in the series, and yet I can't help but feel the book ultimately underperformed. It wasn't bad, but it could have been a hell of a lot better. There was set up to some deep and interesting thoughts on the nature of war, the value of life, and how we can perceive history. But ultimately, it leaves us with the same kind of generic messages about these things we've heard time and time again from less talented media. War is ugly? You don't say. Still, when you consider that Megamorphs number 1 was just a big stupid action piece and Megamorphs 2 was the most ill-conceived bullshit imaginable, this is a giant leap in the right direction for this side series. Despite it ultimately not adding up to as much as I wish it could have, it's still very well written. There's a lot of great dialogue and equally powerful flashes of violence and moments of quiet mourning, and everyone seems to have one scene that ultimately sticks with them forever. Be it Jake's death scene, Cassie morphing a polar bear to beat up racists, Tobias killing Hitler, or the alternate opening. The switching between narrators aspect of the Megamorph series flows a lot better here than it did in the previous two. Again, this is another book relating to the Elements in Krayak, the third such book in the last 5. I've already expressed how I really wish the series didn't focus on this aspect so much, how it starts to regulate the Yeerk invasion to the status of B-plot. Actually, I think all the Elements in Krayak stuff should have been made exclusively Megamorphs content. It's a sub-series that really lends itself to this more cosmic, not really involving the Yeerk's big concept story stuff. As a time travel piece, it's nothing extraordinary. It shows that time is not set, and therefore Tobias totally committed genocide due to misinformation, and has total proof of that now, but never reflects on it. Yes, this will forever be the bee in my bonnet. Actually, this is probably the most straightforward time travel we've ever gotten in this series. And yet, it's the book that Kay Applegate is quoted for saying that it caused her to quit time travel forever. A promise she promptly broke. Well, whatever. It is what it is. And what it is a decent, but not amazing, time travel adventure. I give Megamorphs 3, Elfangor's Secret, a 7 out of 10.
Washington, 6'8", weighs a fucking ton. Opponents beware, he's coming, he's coming, he's coming. Let me lay it on the line, he had 2 on the vine. I mean 2 sets of testicles, so divine. On a horse made of crystal he patrolled the land, with the mason ring and schnauzer in his perfect hands. Here comes George, in control. Women dug his snuff and his gallant stroll. 8 opponents' brains and invented cocaine. He's coming, he's coming, he's coming.